Okay, next game we're talking about is Maniac Mansion, which was nominated by At the Chaos and Mr. Frost XD on iTunes. It was published and developed by Lucasfilm Games, back before they were LucasArts, I take it. It was first published for the Commodore 64. Earliest known release date and territory is October 5th, 1987 in North America. And this is the LucasArts
It was actually the
adventure
first,
game, right?
The first self-published product from Lucasfilm.
It was not their first adventure game, but it is probably the one that people consider to be like their big debut, really.
It's not their first?
Because
yeah, you could play the Labyrinth video game.
Was there like a mode to Ball Blazer I wasn't aware of?
No,
they did an adaptation of David Bowie's film Labyrinth.
Yes, but they didn't publish that one. Is where we're going with this. Mm-hmm. They just made that for hire. But it is that game itself, Labyrinth, is it pioneers a lot of things as well. So Maniac Mansion's kind of not exactly like a part 2, but it's very much an extension of like, let's stop adventure games being horrible to use text phaser interfaces, and let's make it actually like kind of playable in a sense. And both of these games tried to do that, and Maniac Mansion is the next step along.
Well, yeah, it's why Gilbert started developing SCUMM engine. Because he wanted to make
Gilbert, right?
Yeah, Ron Gilbert.
And this was the birth of the SCUMM engine, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think this was the first adventure game with an icon-based interface. I bet if you looked, you'd probably find something like the ZX Spectrum or something. But it is like the first graphical adventure game that actually uses a verb interface, so that's something pretty new and exciting.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it also it has like a vaguely real-time-ish element to it? That's what I remember about it. Like not real time, but like things will happen while you're walking around. Like there's stuff that happens on a certain schedule.
Right, yeah. Sometimes during gameplay, you'll get little cutscenes where one of the family members of the mansion you're currently invading or say, hey, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go get a snack, and then they go to the kitchen and get a snack. And it's possible you run into them, and you don't want to do that.
No, you want to avoid the family at all costs for the most part.
We should probably talk about the story of this game on that note.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, set the game up before we describe the game in detail.
Well, the game was based on Creepshow, the Comet story. Since Dr. Fred, who is the head of the Edison family, is being controlled, acting as an evil scientist who trying to do bad things, and you gotta save your friends.
But your friends start out like, is there one friend who's been kidnapped, and then you've got like...
Yeah, it's the girlfriend Wendy has been kidnapped.
Man,
or is otherwise being held hostage in the Edison mansion.
So like Tuxedo Dude, Surf Dude, Jambox Dude, I can't remember all the characters.
Right, the thing is you have one character you're always stuck with, Dave, who's kind of boring, doesn't really do anything.
There's a good reason you're stuck with him.
Awesome music. Dave's theme is awesome.
True. If you're playing the NES version, every character has their own unique song, and some of them are pretty great.
Some of them are not pretty great. Some of them are really tedious, so watch out.
Let's talk about the couple of things that suck about Maniac Mansion. How about that?
All right. I like talking about things that suck. No, but yeah, so you got your cast of characters. I don't know all the characters off by heart, so someone else help me out.
I told you, Tuxedo Dude.
Bernard, Razor. Oh god. Bernard, Razor, Dave.
There's Bernard the nerd, who's good at fixing things. There's
who is
Jeff,
also in Day of the Tentacle, the sequel.
There's Jeff the surfer, who does like nothing except be able to fix a phone you can find.
Jeff is useless.
Jeff's like the character, I think you could pick and then be like, this game is horrible, I can't do anything, what's going on? Like, he's like a trap character that you end up with, and you're just like, what? What the?
Yeah. I do appreciate how, like, different characters and different team you pick kind of affects your difficulty. Like, if you pick Bernard, things are a lot easier, because he can basically do anything.
I mean, he can do anything, but, can he do music? Because I think it's, he can't do music, but he can do pretty much everything else, and you already have, Dave, who... Can Dave do music? I'm really confused about...
I don't think Dave... You need either a Razor, who's a musician, and... There's another musician I forget the name of. Sid.
Yeah.
Right, her name's Sid.
Oh, is that a reference to the Sid chip?
I don't know.
I thought it was a
Maybe
reference to
not.
Sid Vicious, because why not?
Well, Sid Vicious was a lot of things, but he was not a musician. Burn!
Yeah, the one Sid Vicious fan we have is gonna just just trash us now from this
Sid
point
Vicious
on.
with a genius. The way he'd
Broke things
lead
on
and
stage.
pass out on stage. Yeah, it was awesome.
But
And finally, there is a
yeah.
Wendy who can write.
I don't like Wendy's theme. I picked Wendy and I was like, oh, I don't like this theme at all. I was playing the NES version. Although we were playing the NES version, at least myself and Bob were playing NES via the SCUMM V interface, the PC one.
Right, if you're playing this game, I'd say that's the best way to play, because then you have mouse control, and that makes it a lot nicer overall.
But there's a bunch of versions of this game.
There's 2 NES versions, I believe, right? There was was there one that was done by JVC, I think, in Japan? Or am I misremembering?
Did they discreetly come in and remove one of the infamous
it is
scenes?
a different port.
Oh, did that? Because obviously there's the famous hamster scene which didn't get censored for some reason. Did that get taken out of later cart pressings, or is that in all of them?
I think that's a rumor.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about the most important part of this game, I think, which is the way the interface works, because that's kind of like the big new Maniac Mansion, like the thing that sets us apart from everyone that's kind of before it, which is what you pull. Like, you just have a list of commands that you can perform, and a bunch of them feel really redundant, but you can basically tell your character to open something or close something, read something, whatever. It's a big list of things that you can choose, and you get to pick all of them at once, which really simplifies down the guesswork, because you can click things on screen, obviously. So instead of like the old King's Quest games where you had to kind of try and work out what Roberta Williams thought something on the screen was supposed to be, and then type what you think you have to do with it. Instead, everything is really clear, and you can make a lot of sense in this game. Any spot in the game that you can interact with, I'm pretty sure if you hover over it, it will tell you what that is, so there's an element of pixel hunting, but not too much, because it generally will let you know.
That sounds like a minor... Yeah, that sounds like a minor feature. That's a big deal at the time.
I do
That's
appreciate
a huge deal.
There's basically a command that you can click on to identify anything you move the cursor over. Sometimes that's really useful to have.
Yes.
They really tried to simplify how difficult and mind-numbing old adventure games can be. As much as I love them, there was definitely a much higher difficulty curve just to basic use.
I mean, so this was, I believe this is a credit to Ron Gilbert, right? Like, he really disliked older systems, so he kind of wanted to gut them and make a system that was playable.
Well, Chip Morningstar did the base code for the engine, who was a different Lucasfilm employee, but Gilbert built on that massively.
Okay.
Gilbert did most of the engine after Chip Morningstar.
And so my understanding, especially with Maniac Mansion, is this is probably a lot of people's first proper point and click from that general time period, because this, you could get this on the NES, and that's very confusing since the NES is not known for its robust library of point and click adventure games. It
Had
has
that kick-ass port of King's Quest V, though.
But a lot of people couldn't afford a computer at that time.
That's true. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely right.
Computers were massively expensive at this point.
And you couldn't really do anything with them, which is the crazy part.
You could use the keyboard
to
to
a job
type.
that necessitated them.
Yeah, they were mostly information processors as such.
So it was the first chance people who primarily played NES or Atari and arcade games, what have you, may have had to play that genre at all.
And you mentioned that you had been yourself very confused, because you did play this one as a kid, and so it was just
Oh yeah,
weird.
I was a really young kid though, let's be entirely fair, so... And not having had anybody around me who used computers, this was a totally new genre to me as a small child. When you rented games from the store back in the day, you didn't really always get an instruction manual, so I had no idea what was going on.
But something
I'm
must
33, so
if you if something pulled you in about this, and it was a rental with no real instruction sheet. Sometimes they had that weird sticker that nobody could read.
If you're lucky, but
print was worn off by the time it got to you. But yeah, I mean, what drew you into the game?
Do they just not trust you in America? Sorry, because every rental I ever went to, they either taped the manual into the thing or they gave you the manual. I've never rented something where they're like, no, you get nothing, just have a cartridge.
I kid you not. My cousin, every game he rented, he would just take and keep the manual forever.
Is that legal?
So it's one of the reasons that we never had.
It is not legal, but nobody's going to stop you. And he used to have like a cabinet just like stacked full of NES manuals for games.
So he's the guy. He's the reason that this one guy is like, that's it. Yeah. No manuals for anyone now.
In the greater Indianapolis area, he's the reason why your games did not have manuals when you rented them. Like, if it was it would have been really hard to understand, but like, what kept you coming back? Because you obviously...
I think I went away from it for a good long while, but it stuck with me because of the art, because of the new genre that it was to me, that I had interest in, even if I didn't fully understand as a child. The music was great, and I was just generally interested. I always was interested in a game called Maniac Mansion. I always liked horror, so that always sounded kind of cool to me. I'm like, that's like the coolest sounding NES game I've ever heard of.
I feel like this game be a bit overwhelming for a 4-year-old, but maybe I was just a dumb 4-year-old myself. So
it would have been almost
it really was
impenetrable to a 4-year-old.
Like the art in this game is unlike anything on the NES, I think, because almost every other game is going to be tile based, whereas this one is obviously, again, like Shadowgate. It's just areas, and you've just got these large characters that walk around. So it's again quite an interesting title.
Yeah, it really visually stuck with me because I hadn't seen much of anything like it. I was used to, racing games, shooting games.
I want to say that I just really appreciate how, for lack of a better word, anti-Sierra this game is. Like, it's not nearly as needlessly cruel and obtuse as your average Sierra game. Like, you can die, certainly, but you kind of really pretty much have to go out of your way to do so. It's pretty much your fault.
I would say, in contrast to some later LucasArts or Lucasfilm games or whatever, this one still has more of an edge to it in a lot of places, since getting locked in the dungeon is pretty punishing, and you can get killed, and the character system, it's like a really interesting idea to have like you get a character and you pick some other characters, and all your other characters act as extra lives if some of them get killed. But I think like it does kind of, because it's like a non-linear-ish game, it actually makes the game very kind of difficult to figure out what's going on in some ways. Because, if you have the wrong character and you interact with an object, they'll be like, oh, I can't do anything with this, I don't know. But another character be like, yeah, I'll just do this. And so you get in this awkward kind of position where if you try and exhaust your options, you might not realize that an option that you thought was nothing actually is supposed to be interacting with another character, which can make it in some ways more difficult than a Sierra game. Because Sierra games, as a general rule, if you do something wrong, you get horribly murdered. That's generally what happens. But you've got a much more, if you die in a Sierra game, you're like, okay, I wasn't supposed to do that. Whatever I did, that was wrong. In this game, because you got like a lot of semi-dead ends, but also not dead ends, you can hit these points where you're like, did I do something wrong here? Did I miss something? Did I need to get an extra character? And then your characters get dragged off, and maybe you accidentally get everyone killed or thrown in the dungeon, and then you're stuck with a surfer guy, and you're just like, oh my god, what have I done? So you have to reset.
It's just me and Spicoli now. What am I going to do? I mean, the thing about, like, it has this kind of campy horror sense of humor that Caitlin alluded to that stuck out to me as a kid before I really knew what that was. But I knew what, like, kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say, like, ironic kind of value or camp value or something. I kind of had a feeling of like when something was sort of not taking itself seriously, but being kind of deadpan about it. And
the goal when they were writing it was definitely B horror. They took a lot of inspiration from different B horror films.
Yeah, the kids had the brilliant idea of, you know what we should do? Take turns going into this house one at a time, while the rest of us just wait in the front yard.
Well, you can switch between 3. That's important, though. Like, that's an interesting mechanic.
True. You can't send in a group. That's true. But still, like, the idea of, like, let's split up so we can be picked off individually.
Well, is that a Scooby-Doo thing? Have they just quickly grabbed a bit of Scooby-Doo and said, let's split up, gang, kind of deal?
Well, I mean, horror movies wouldn't really work.
No, everyone, they have to split up.
The people like, you know what we should do is stick together and call the cops. Like, then it's over.
I memean, part of the thing about this a little bit is because the phones don't work, so there's like a slight implication that you can't straight away call the cops, I think. Right. I don't know. There's a little bit here and there. Yeah. There's obviously tentacles in this game that are there, which is kind of like very, very B grade, like these giant tentacles walking around that you talk to, and one of them's like, "Give me food," which is amusing.
They're purple and green, by the way.
Yes.
Oh,
There's
man,
pmost tentacle
so
and green
cool.
tentacle.
So cool.
That's going to be one of the more
Returning
memorable.
characters.
Yeah, because they bring these characters back because they're kind of more interesting, I think, than most guys. The campiness you can also find, if we quickly mention that there's a little bit of censorship in the NES version. There was some sexual innuendos in the original versions.
To be honest, I don't really mind that so much. I feel that in a way it kind of makes you feel a little closer to the more modern LucasArts adventure games. Because in modern LucasArts games, you're never going to have a character like threaten they're going to sexually molest you, so...
You won't get that on many Nintendo platforms either, so you can see why they did it. But that's,
Is
you
that
know...
the language they
probably
use?
unnecessary in the first place, but oh.
Well, I can't remember, is it the daughter character or the wife character? Nurse Edna, sorry.
Nurse Edna. Is
Yeah.
it Nurse
Yeah.
Edna,
Yeah,
right?
she's the doctor's wife.
Yes, the Nurse Edna character says a lot of innuendos. Very, very like, definitely 1980, like, sort of very lazy innuendos, but...
Where's the beef? I'm talking about your penis. Like that?
Basically, yeah, it's just like...
It's about as 1980s as I can
It's
get.
really funny, in the sense that it's like, you know, it's laughably poor innuendo, so that's fine. They removed a skeleton as well, which is kind of weird, and just like, we can't have skeletons
Yeah.
in the game, because...
You can nuke a hamster, you can get locked in a dungeon, but skeletons, I don't know.
Yeah, just... get rid of
Meanwhile, like,
skeletons.
Castlevania is like...
Full of skeletons that do shit and just throw crap at you constantly.
So-
Did you know that the mansion is actually designed after Skywalker Ranch?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I mean, I knew
I
that,
did
but
not
I
know that.
That's some good
forgot
trivia.
completely.
That is some good trivia, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great stuff. It's is it like is it directly like correlating to it? Like, is there elements in the mansion that you would actually have found in the ranch at the time, or is it just the
some
general? Because I
Like,
mean,
I know the entertainment room and the library
'cause
are direct replicas of rooms from the Skywalker Ranch. Other
'cause
ones may not be, and they were kind of changed to.
I'm really
you know,
hoping that
needs of the game.
George Lucas has like a room which has just got a giant bed and two humongous speakers set up in it. Like, I hope that's Mr. Lucas's room.
I don't think he lives at the... It's an office.
No, but there's a bed and you look. That's what's in this game. There's beds and
Just go to
speakers.
the giant speaker bedroom. We'll talk about some stuff. Get naked. It'll be cool. That's my George Lucas
There's
impression.
another thing, but
That's pretty close.
Like real quick.
Yes, Bob.
I like how the game's characters kind of actually speak and react to situations different ways. Like in Sierra games, like no one ever remembers what King Graham or Roger Wilco says. It's always about the narrator. But in this game, the characters actually kind of almost act like actual people.
And it does feel like kind of like a Fast Times at Ridgemont High kind of cast too. Like you know which one will be played by Judge Reinhold and all that.
Yeah, I mean they've got every intention of just you know, I mean it's an 80s period piece, you know. They've just grabbed, you know, there's a nerd, there's a rocker, there's a kind of coolish guy, you know. It's so stereotype, and that's, you know, that's what we say when it's like B grade. It's going to be just stereotype after stereotype thrown at you. And you could definitely easily get away with that at this point, where it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of interesting and fun, and different to Swordy McKnight guy stabs a person, like, so that's kind of interesting.
More
It
likely,
was a
like,
unique pastiche at the time.
yes. So since there's so much that can be said about this game, and we will never have the final word on it, but we do need to rank it.
We constantly.
I'm gonna say Maniac Mansion has to be above Blue Singer. There's no way.
I know you're right.
Everyone wants to put
the
things above
surfboard
Blue
guy is kind of like a Dogs Bauer-esque character, so I can get
Especially
behind this.
considering the contribution that the SCUMM engine has made in overall terms of adventure gaming.
The biggest thing this game brings to the adventure gaming is basically exactly that. Just like, okay, everyone, stop making these stupid typing games. Nobody can play them. Let's get this under control. And I mean, it's really telling because the text phraser interface.
I mean, King's Quest was huge inspiration for the game, but
yeah, like
I would definitely say this is a better game than King's Quest.
Well, King's Quest, and it's like after Maniac Mansion, King's Quest eventually had to adopt to a point-and-click interface as well. You know.
Yeah, but we've gone over that 5 isn't really that good of a game.
No,
especially compared to Monkey Island.
Okay, but
Well, we're not even in the King's Quest V range, which is really, really low.
Right.
I think we're like looking at this is a seminal game. You know, it's not just in adventure games, but just in general importance. And I'm looking at the
tough one about this one is in terms of purely, I think, like the fun and that you sort of refinement. There's a lot of other point and clicks that kind of came out that were a little bit more not like better essentially, but this one kind of was the adventure game that probably inspired a huge amount after. You basically had Sayura games which really needed something like Maniac Mansion to come out to sort of rein them in, because they were just constantly just the most overly technical, difficult to operate things. The Maniac Mansion comes out, and that leads to the Monkey Island games. It leads to whatever, like Full Throttle. Basically, every LucasArts game owes everything to Maniac Mansion, which is
every Lucasfilm game you possibly love, every adventure game you love.
The thing that I find interesting is
some debt to Maniac Mansion.
I don't think many really went with a lot of its features in some ways. Like, obviously I don't think any did the kind of like the semi like stuff happening, like characters moving around of their own impetus doesn't really happen in others. You don't really pick characters in others. They verbs, all of those are kind of redundanted out, and you kind of get far fewer. So it is kind of unique, and it's unique in some interesting ways that the other games didn't do, because it's insane, and the people who made this game knew, like, after making it, like, oh man, I wish we had thought this through a little bit more, because they had a real hard time making this game. Like, they didn't know what they were doing, and luckily for us, they weren't
6 to 9 months of development were spent solely on the engine.
Yeah, just getting things to work, and they had all these ideas, and luckily for us, they're the kind of people who would just like keep working and bashing their head against it until it functions, sort of, rather than the kind of people
that almost got Gilbert fired. They took so long with the game.
That would be
Ron Gilbert almost lost his job over Maniac Mansion.
This is a game developer, studio type place where their only job was don't lose money. Just break even, at least break even. That's what George Lucas told them. It's like, your only job here is not to lose money. I don't care what you do, just don't lose money. And then the share, I won't have to talk about,
Man, I missed that era of game development. That's a special time. It's like,
it was pretty much probably just Lucasfilm games that had. Everybody else is like, you have to make money.
You have to just
make money.
Because nobody else had that kind of capital to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
He was just like, I like computers and I want to make games, and go for it.
Well, he was trying to establish, like, George Lucas was always like, how do we sort of establish ourselves and make more money? It's always like, what's the end game of making money? And that was definitely the plan here.
Well, he founded Pixar about the same time, or helped found Pixar. And then he got a divorce shortly thereafter, and a lot of stuff had to get sold off. Enter Steve Jobs, and then there's the rest of that.
But for this game, let's look at the numbers. Okay, so we've got something. We've got Space Harrier, Super Mario World 2, GoldenEye, Crash Bandicoot 2. I'm thinking somewhere in that area for Maniac Mansion.
I'd put it above Crash Bandicoot. But I don't like Crash Bandicoot.
You know what?
Yeah.
At this point, I think it'd be okay, just because Maniac Mansion is really special.
It really is.
I'm not gonna make a habit of that, though.
I like it more than GoldenEye, but I understand a lot of people like GoldenEye a whole lot.
I think we should put it above GoldenEye.
I'm happy actually.
GoldenEye is not Maniac Mansion.
I would be happy with that.
Yeah, no.
Okay, I'd be above GoldenEye.
If you think about it, Doom is way at the top, and that's closer than GoldenEye to being
okay with it being under Doom.
It is way under Doom, yeah, but
I think above GoldenEye is a pretty good spot for Maniac Mansion, because it does lack some of the refinement, and we know why it doesn't have that refinement, but that little refinement later on really made these games sing a lot better. This is a rough-edged thing, but everything owes it.
Viewed in a vacuum, I think, which is the right way to see this, because it is kind of the first of its ilk. It really is something special, and I think that's a good place to put it. So Maniac Mansion goes right above GoldenEye 007, and right below Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island.